Good evening. I am Jill Bernstein, and I have the privilege this evening of representing the League of Women Voters of Bellingham and Whatcom County. The League of Women Voters was founded in 1920. The League is a nonpartisan organization with more than 700 affiliates in all 50 states. Our goals are to encourage informed and active participation in government, increase an understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League never endorses candidates or political parties. Membership is open to all people age 16 and older, and we invite you to join. Tonight's forum is being broadcast on BTV and the City of Bellingham YouTube channel. Recordings of this program will be available on the League of Women Voters of Bellingham-Whatcom County website that can be found at lwbellinghamwhatcom.org. The forum will be rebroadcast on BTV and on KMRE Community Radio 88.3 through Election Day, August 1st. No portion of this forum may be rebroadcast in part or in full without the written consent of the League of Women Voters of Bellingham-Whatcom County. Our media partners include the Linden Tribune, the Salish Current, the Northern Light, and KMRE 88.3 Community Radio. Tonight, we are hosting candidates for Bellingham City Mayor. The City of Bellingham management is led by the elected mayor in a strong mayor, weak council form of government. The mayor is the executive and administrative leader, overseeing all employees and all city actions such as public work projects and law enforcement. The mayor serves a 4-year term. I would like now to introduce the candidates in alphabetical order. They are Seth Fleetwood, Kim Lund, Christina Michelle Martins, Mike McCauley, and Christopher J. McCoy. Here are the rules that we will follow this evening. There will be no formal opening statement by the candidates. The introductory question is tailored to elicit responses consistent with opening statements. All candidates will be asked the same question. Candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to each question and will give a 1-minute closing argument or closing statement at the conclusion of the questioning. I will ask candidates to speak in alphabetical order and will alternate the order for each question. The timer displayed on the screen will count down the time. The timer will be purple when the candidate begins, then turn yellow when 15 seconds remain. When time is up, the timer will turn red. If the candidate continues to speak after the time limit, we may cut the microphone. Are there any questions regarding the rules? If our timer is ready, we can start. Timer? Yes. So starting with candidate number 1, which will be Mr. Fleetwood. Would you, and then we will ask the same question in order for each of the candidates. What experiences have you had outside of your professional life that will shape and inform your service to the city if you are the successful candidate? Mr. Fleetwood.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you to the League for having this forum tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been public spirited my entire life. Certainly my entire adulthood. Where that came from, who knows? But I've had an interest in community betterment pretty much from the very beginning of my involvement when I returned to Bellingham after living away for about 10 years. I got involved in environmental work, working for Lake Whatcom protections when I returned to Bellingham in 1993. I had an interest in land use. I ran for the Whatcom County Council in 2001, spent 8 years there. One of the great things about serving as a council member is that you have legislative oversight of the entire operation of governance. You gain enormous insight into the workings of local government. When I was in college, I worked in Olympia, learned about state government, I worked in Congress in the 80s after graduating from college. After serving 2 terms on the Whatcom County Council, I served 2 terms on the Bellingham City Council. I was a very active council member during all of those years, bringing forward a number of initiatives in all manner of things, including housing, environment, like Whatcom protection, et cetera. So, and I've spent 4 years now as mayor. So I bring great experience to the
Your time is
position.
up. Thank you. Kim Lund, same question.
Thank you, Jill. Reflecting on my experiences outside of my professional background, I think some of the most important would be my time in engineering school that instilled in me to take very data-informed approaches, willingness to try new things, to fail and to adapt, and a belief in failing forward and in iterative and continuous improvement. I think being a parent has been transformational in the way that I see the world, and that I'm deeply motivated when I think about how my 22-year-old daughter, who's living in Boston, what her prospects are for moving back to this community that she grew up in and loves. It shapes the sense of urgency that I feel around our uncertain climate future right now. I've been active and deeply involved in civic engagement as a Whatcom County Planning Commissioner. During that time, I've been able to understand what good code and clear policy looks like and the unintended consequences of quick fix policymaking. I think my time on board service throughout this community, whether it's Bridget Collins, seeing the damages of broken families and child abuse, or time on Community Wise Bellingham, looking critically at the Gateway Pacific Terminal project, and also with the Whatcom Million Trees, is deeply informative.
Thank you. And Christina Michelle Martins, the same question.
Thank you very much. I would say that I truly believe the events of the last 3 to 4 years have opened a lot of people's eyes into the gaps that we see across the nation and in every corner, including Bellingham here, or right here at home. As a Black woman who was raised in America by a single mother who was on every available government subsidiary to get by, I intimately know what is happening to the community members here in Bellingham who feel like they have been left behind, who are experiencing absolutely traumatic events and living in deplorable conditions and having no support or backing from their local government. The one thing that comes up nonstop all the time is, over the past 4 years, has been the increasing amount of people experiencing homelessness. And I feel like that's touching everything. And so while I would love to say that we can do everything all at once, the one thing that is really standing out to me, and the one thing that I've been advocating for since becoming a council member, and really saying it every moment that I can get, is that we need true tenant and renter protections. We need to open every single available avenue into making sure we can stop people from being unhoused, and then bring our service providers together to more effectively support people who are experiencing homelessness.
Thank you so much. And now, Mike McCauley, the same question.
Hi, I am Mike McCauley, and I am here tonight to earn your support and your vote to be the next mayor of Bellingham. So thank you to the league, my fellow candidates here, and all of you in attendance. I believe I'm offering to people of Bellingham a unique opportunity this year. Most of the time, we're given a ballot full of folks with strong opinions, but who don't really have a solid background to truly succeed at the position that they're seeking. I can assure you, I have strong opinions too, but I also have a background with over 2 decades of civic engagement here in Bellingham. I've owned several businesses here in the city of Bellingham. I am a former builder, and now I design things for other folks to build. I've been a homeowner, and now I'm currently a renter. I've been on more boards and commissions than I can count. I'm currently one of your planning commissioners. I have an undergraduate degree from Evergreen focused on urban ecology and urban studies, and I have a master's degree where I wrote my thesis on growth management. I was your port commissioner for 8 years, where I focused on the health of our local economy, and I've managed troops in combat. All that being said, the skill set that I will bring to the work of the mayor's office is exactly what we need right now. And people tell me I'm kind of easy to get along with, which is kind of nice. I have a detailed 5-point plan that I will roll out next year. Get to functional zero by housing our unhoused. You use municipal revenue bonds, not new taxes, to build permanently affordable housing. Aggressively pursue transportation mode shift. And let's get really honest about climate change and seriously focus on resiliency across the board.
Thank you so much. And now Chris McCoy,
Hey,
outside of your
Jill.
professional life. Hello.
Of course, Jill and the league. I really appreciate the time, and I really appreciate your valuation of our personal lives as well, which to me is so important and a huge part of the driving factor of why I'm here today. Starting at a very young age, I was driven to community development as early as my eighth grade year in Colston Middle School. I was part of the steering committee for the grand reopening of Bellingham High School back in 2000. So having grown up in this community really at an early start, seeing and cultivating so many different elements of the way that I interact with this town, having started businesses here, I actually had to, after graduating college, had to become the primary caregiver for my mother, which was a big deal and led to a lot of deep life experience around what really matters to me, what is the value system that makes me really love this community, and also be able to cultivate health and wealth for everybody in it, and really what reinforced that as of late has been becoming a father. I've got a 2 and a 4-year-old son, so I've got a tremendous amount of skin in the game. I'm very committed to being one of the best fathers there ever has been, and a part of that is making sure that the community that we live in, that they grow up in, is a great place to be. And so that's a huge part of why I'm committed to coming in and finding and solving the problems that our town has from a very unique and a strong business background. So I'm excited to get to know you all better with some of the more questions.
Thank you so much. And the next question will begin with Kim Lund. Ms. Lund, a recent survey found a significant portion of downtown businesses plan to close or move away from the downtown area within the next year. What are the major components of your plan to attract and retain businesses in our commercial district? You're muted.
I'm muted.
No, there you go.
Okay. I think this is a critical issue, and focusing on downtown vibrancy will be a big part of what I want to do as mayor. I think we need to be listening to the 200 businesses that are telling us that they're feeling unheard and unsupported. We've made tremendous investments in understanding and valuing small local business, and we need to be responsive in this moment. My vision for downtown is that we're going to have families going to Mallard's after the sports game, and going to the bagelry and navigating the community that they deeply love. To do that work, we need to take some actions. We have to keep investing in the downtown partnership and other security solutions that are working. We have to get to a return of bicycle cops. We need to return to have a narcotics department. We are in a fentanyl crisis, an opioid crisis. We need to invest in that work. I think that we also need to be looking at why do we have so many vacant spaces downtown. In parallel, we have to understand what are the structural impediments and what are the implementation plans for economic vibrancy. I want to build more to activate the downtown core. I want people living, working, investing, shopping, eating in our downtown, because what's at risk to me is a community that could lose its beating heart, and I won't stand for that.
And the same question for Christina Michelle Martins, please.
The first thing I think that could be done almost immediately is the development of a community center downtown. There is not a whole lot of opportunity for people just to gather and be in community and get to know each other. And I think that having that type of space available would automatically create more traffic. And once you're down there, it then becomes more of a draw to go check out these wonderful shops you would have never passed before, because the heart of downtown, or the driving force of downtown, is really to spend money. And in this current financial climate, there's not a whole lot of excess of that left. And then I think that the biggest current thing actually affecting the businesses is, again, the population of people experiencing homelessness and mental health crisis. I truly believe the only way out of that is to get very realistic about how much we are willing to spend on those services to really address these problems. I think we need to see a substantial increase in all wages for people who are on the front lines doing this work, so we can lower the attrition rate of people leaving those jobs. And that is a solution that might be able to really come to the forefront and have the funding within 6 months to a year. Looking further into the future, we have amazing educational institutions right here in town, and I think we need to help develop a pathway for these careers right here, for people living here and staying here doing the
Thank
important
you
work.
so much. And now, Mike McCauley.
Unmute. I think everybody's going to have very similar answers to this question. So I think, thankfully we're all on the same page. I think we're all hearing the same sort of things, and we're all, willing to tackle those issues. And I think one of the most important things that we can focus on, and we can do this pretty quickly, and thank you, Seth, for adding more police downtown. That was the right move right now. We have to reestablish authority. We have to show the community, and not just the downtown businesses, but we have people in Linden that are complaining about the downtown in Bellingham, right? We need to show our entire region that the downtown is clean and it's safe. And we do that by reestablishing authority, right? The efforts to clean up the alleys, spot on, absolutely one of the best things we can do. We got to keep that going. And we certainly need more policing, but the kind of policing where it's like what I like to call it is they have to have the right mission, they have to have the right training, and they have to have the right tools. Because right now, if everything is a nail and all you have is a hammer, that's not really working. The county's been promising diversion services for quite some time, and we really need to push on the county to get those things moving so that when the police do interact with someone downtown, that they've got some place to take those people that's the appropriate place for them to go. Our community development department needs to check in to make sure that what they're saying we're doing is what we're actually doing. And I think we need to take a good hard look at simplifying our regulatory environment for small businesses.
Thank you. And Chris McCoy.
Thank you so much. As a business owner in downtown for over 13 years, and still several businesses, all of which are still in business and doing well, having been through the hardships and the pains of COVID, which I know every business barely survived that, including my own, and now having rebounded, I've seen first and foremost what the effect of a lot of the changes that have been addressed downtown, along with the drug use, which is leading to more crime and the homelessness. All of those issues are pretty big source factors of what is causing the diminishment or the degradation of the reason why people want to go down there, and it's not just that. Obviously, homelessness is its own issue that deserves a ton of time and energy, and it is a top priority for me just based on where my heart's at and the way I value the people, every person in our community. But also I know that having a true spirit of collaboration and creativity is something that has gotten my businesses to last and to thrive, something I see a ton of opportunity for downtown. Something I have done. I've created hundreds of jobs downtown. So working with the Small Business Development Center, working with the Environmental Innovation Resource Center, things like this, as well as Sustainable Connections. There's great organizations in this town that want to help. A lot of them have had a hard time getting assistance from the local government, something that obviously during COVID was hard to be a top priority. And so making sure that we have a real reassessment of and taking stock of the values down there, and then putting the right economic tools behind it to make downtown thrive would be my plan, and something I've been doing for a long time. So I'm excited to be able to do so.
Thank you so much. And Seth Fleetwood.
Thank you. Downtown was doing well. It was coming back right up until the pandemic. Let us not forget, we had a global pandemic. We had shelter in place. We had a crash in businesses. We had an enormous need. We had an increase in a large array of problematic social conditions that we had to address. I was effective, responsive. The leadership that we showed at the city responded to all manner of things to try to be responsive to the concerns that were expressed by people downtown. You'll recall just several months ago, I put forward a proposal, an ordinance to prohibit unlawful use of drugs in downtown Bellingham. Shortly thereafter, we created a new patrol of officers that are walking the beat downtown. It's working. I got a ringing endorsement from longtime business person Peggy Platter, who owns Sojourns, sending me a nice message saying things are getting better. So yeah, we went through real hardship and things are coming back. We've established a sanitation division. We just did a deep clean of all alleys and streets in downtown Bellingham just recently. We've created a downtown mayoral working solution group. We're putting people in closer contact between the businesses and my office so we can implement short-term quick solutions. We're doing all manner of things that are responsive, including $1 million in security and an ambassador program. Things are getting better downtown. We've been going through a difficult time.
Thank you so much. And the next question will begin with Christina Michelle Martins. And the question is, in 2022, the City Council voted to require increased energy efficiency, to encourage solar installations, and to require that water and space heating be all electric for commercial and 4+ story multifamily buildings. What next steps do you propose, if any, to reduce the use of fossil fuels by Bellingham residents?
What a great and amazing question. Really, to quote our public works director, parking is the number one topic, no matter what no matter what issue you're dealing with. Not an exact quote, obviously, but it comes up all the time, nonstop. And so there's been a lot of discussion recently about how we make this community less car dependent. And I do think that our local government is doing a really good job in assessing how we can contribute to that by the bike and pedestrian plans, and by ensuring that we have EV chargers and are starting to make those much more mandatory and available to the community. But we also definitely need to see a vast improvement in public transportation, which is not technically a city. The city doesn't technically oversight that in its entirety, but the advocacy that can come from Bellingham and to make a more efficient transit system in general is something that, if we really do want to move away from fossil fuels, getting fossil cars off the road is the best thing that we can be doing. And so making everything more accessible, every other option other than having to drive your car. And then if we have less cars, we will need less parking, and that will also go into amazing housing development. But just making sure that we're taking the steps we need to as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And Mike McCauley.
This is something I deal with every day in my work as a building designer. The first thing I think that's most critical here is I believe the city needs to create a fund to help people to actually install the equipment. If you know anything about remodeling houses at all, if you've ever done a remodel at your house, you know that energy efficiency upgrades can be extremely expensive. So we need zero or low interest loans. Now, we've got some programs in the past that the city has utilized for block grants and that sort of thing through federal dollars and leveraging local dollars. We need to amp that up quite a bit, or we're not going to get the shifting that we need as quickly as we need it. Thank you, Christine, for mentioning the EV chargers. I think the city is putting in 2nd generation chargers. We need to get 3rd generation chargers from now on. The 2nd generation chargers are already out of date. And transportation mode shift, it's one of the planks in my platform. If you have heard me talk at all, you've heard me talk about micro mobility. It's a bit of a mouthful, but essentially what we do is we follow the arterials. If you look at the city overall, we have a grid pattern in most of our neighborhoods. You go 1 block off the arterial and you're in a neighborhood that's a street that's essentially empty most of the day. We turn those into what used to be called bicycle boulevards, but we're going to amp that up. We're going to make them micro mobility corridors where everybody that's not in a car has priority, and you flow through town just as quickly as you might ever have done in a car on an arterial. When we get to the north, we dig a tunnel right under I-5, just east of Meridian, and we built 3 bridges across Meridian to connect the neighborhoods up there.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley. And now Mr. McCoy.
Thank you so much. As an avid cyclist, I've been really enjoying all of the ways that I can get around town on my bike and feel safe and be in nature. It's a beautiful thing. I must commend Seth, you and your administration have done a great job at making sure we have a very bikeable town, very pedestrian-friendly town, as well as in the energy infrastructure realm, being a thought leader in really pushing forward on eliminating the reliance on fossil fuels. So I feel really proud to be in a community that is a thought leader like that. Now, I do see that there are definitely some additional ways to make sure that we're making thoughtful investments. Like Mike had mentioned, we want to make sure that the technology we're putting in is going to last. We don't want a generation of equipment that they'll then get antiquated and have to be replaced, because all of this is very expensive. So being as the Biden administration just passed the CHIPS Act, and with a lot of science and R&D availability, I would be really heavily leaning into looking for governmental financing to make sure that we can attract, both build and attract new businesses that'll create lasting, sustainable green jobs in our community, leveraging those funds, because it's a huge amount, it's trillions of dollars that are that the federal funding is providing. And we've got an amazing opportunity here with very environmental centric community that can attract a lot of businesses and create a lot of great jobs. So really making sure that the investments that we're putting into place will be lasting, but also that they will create great jobs and help assess and alleviate some of the other growing pains that our community is experiencing.
Thank you very much. And now to Seth Fleetwood, please.
All right, thank you. It's one of the most important questions of all that you're asking. I have been a climate realist for many, many years. I've served on a number of climate organizations. I was a strong believer that the Paris Agreement should mean that every government on the face of the earth has to commit to converting to renewable energy and engaging in adaptation. And we're doing that here in Bellingham. I have elevated the prominence of climate action in the city of Bellingham more than ever before. I've established a climate office. We have dedicated staff working on this all of the time. The city of Bellingham recently passed an advanced building code for commercial buildings and for multifamily to get us off natural gas. We're taking enormous steps to prepare for what I hope is a big market assistance as it relates to electrification of vehicles. We're putting in 100 charge stations. We're doing a pilot project right now, which is going to inform how we can help moderate and low-income people that can't afford heat pumps to get them. And we're doing some amazing research in that right now. And it will allow us to then scale up with a funding source. There's just a lot of work that we're doing right now that's really important. We've got dedicated staff working on adaptation for extreme weather events so that we can help make our citizens safe, who otherwise wouldn't have access to clean air and cool air, depending on the situation.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. And Kim Lund.
Thanks for this question. It's something that's near and dear to my heart, and I've received a professional certification from Oxford Syed University about leading sustainable corporations. So I understand what it looks like to embed sustainability throughout an organization from the top down. I also spent the last year and a half working on the climate action plan for Bellingham's K-12 schools, which is Whatcom County's fourth largest employer, and important work. We've talked about incentivizing walkability, and I think we can look to other communities. The Burt Gilman is an example of a gem in Seattle that connects green spaces throughout that city. We have a touch of that here on the South Bay Trail. Let's expand that. We might have greenways on the ballot. That could be an opportunity to do that kind of work. We've talked a lot about EV chargers, but we have that now, but the rate that we're charging the people that are connecting to it is above the rate that the city's paying. That doesn't make sense to me. We should be charging it at least with the city. I think that we can look at the WTA. If we want to incentivize public transportation, only $1.5 million of their budget comes from fares. The number one barrier to riding public transportation is people don't understand how to pay or how much it is. Let's do away with transportation fares and make it free and equitable for all. These are some of the things that I think about, and the best use of energy is no energy at all. So let's set some goals for what energy usage for our community could look like.
Thank you so much. And now for our next question, we'll begin with Mike McCauley. In addition to the many programs and policies already in place at the city to serve our unhoused neighbors, please describe any new programs you would propose and how to fund those programs.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that the funding for one of my proposals to house the unhoused, it already exists. We're getting more dollars from both Olympia and the federal government every day, so that's super helpful. the people that are already working in the subsidized housing marketplace, whether it's fully subsidized or we're spending subsidizing the free marketplace with, like, say, Section 8 vouchers and that kind of activity, those people are doing amazing work, and I want to keep them to doing exactly what they're doing. So any new proposals should not compete with the scarce dollars that those people have access to. So my proposal, though, uses new money to do something that we've already seen done around the world, around the nation, and sort of around here in Bellingham. I think we've all heard about the micro home. I call them micro homes. Some people call them tiny homes. We've seen these small villages. In the last 4 years, though, we've only enabled 75 of these units to be installed around the city in 3 small villages. We need to amp that up in a big way. My program, which you can see more on my website, gets in a lot more detail than I can right here. But my program takes money we already have, and we deploy these micro homes right away. I've already priced them out. I know what it costs to build them. I used to build, when I was in college, I used to build some modular housing in a factory with 400 people. So I know how fast you can turn houses out. I know how much it costs to put them up there, and I know where we can do it. So my proposal is to get at least 300 deployed in my very first year.
And Chris McCoy, how would you answer?
Great. Thank you for this question, Jill. As you know, in my surveying of the community with myself and my team, it's become very obvious that the homelessness is one of the top issues on everybody's mind. And, one of the main motivating factors for me in this campaign has early on, I found a organization called Homes Now, and they're an amazing local nonprofit organization that does just what Mike was discussing. They create tiny home villages, and they're all resident run, and they're incredibly cost effective. And so we have this amazing model to help solve a lot of the issues that are the sort of the center of the growing pains of our community, where we've got all these homeless people concentrated in the downtown area where that's all the services are. With this model, we can decentralize that in a very cost-effective manner, taking away a lot of the costs that come from having that issue. And so it will free up funds. And like Mike said, there are funds available, especially for methods such as this, to be able to scale these programs drastically. And for me, I think decentralizing it and integrating it across the community, where in more than one neighborhood, not having a centralized system of these homes, having every neighborhood get to know this community, such as the South Hill community, who actually really enjoys the Unity Village tiny home down in Fairhaven, showcasing that, showing them that they're ready to grow, and then changing some of there's just a couple small tweaks that need to happen to make sure that the city can enable that. There's a cap on how many non-permanent dwellings can be. So little changes like that to really help ramp up that and create options for the people that are unhoused.
Thank you so much. And Seth Fleetwood.
So hearing lots of ideas here. During my term as mayor, I've actually done the work of standing up emergency shelter. The first year when COVID blew up in our community, and that first COVID winter, you'll recall the protest at Camp 210. I observed right away that we needed increased shelter. I gave direction to my staff to increase the available tiny home village shelter care in our community. It tripled under my administration. So we know how to do this work. We know how complicated it is. It's enormously complicated. We have issues with finding operators and behavioral health issues and all manner of things, but we know how to do it. The question as to what we need to do to increase capacity is, in some respect, simple. It requires coming together with council, looking at our consolidated action plan, where we have identified how money is going to be spent, and making a decision on whether we want to prioritize that money that goes to permanent subsidized housing and in some portion towards emergency shelter care, and ask whether we want to stand up one more. We can have that conversation. We can put up yet another tiny home village. I'm open to having that conversation, but it's done through an important public process and vetting.
Thank you very much. And Kim Lund.
Great. Well, I agree with many of the candidates. We know that we need to increase our emergency shelter. I think there's agreement that the tiny home village model works well, but we need to do much more of that. We are far away from meeting the shelter standards set forth by Martin v. Boise for our community, and that's holding us back. I think to me, though, I look at where are the direct levers that a mayor can pull, and I see homelessness as a fundamental, it's a housing issue, and it's across the entire housing continuum, because when we have high prices for home ownership across the board, that impacts our rents. It increases housing insecurity, so that if you have an unplanned medical event or your car breaks down, you're that much closer to being unhoused. So to me, our ability to build housing across the continuum is directly related to people who are unhoused in this moment. And that's a direct lever of change that the mayor can influence. We need to continue to resource the great people and the great work in our planning department. More staff will reduce to less permitting time, reduce costs, more incentives to build. I'm a big fan of investing in that work. Let's look outside of the community at where they are doing expedited permitting projects, especially for multi-use and affordable housing. I think that's all directly within the mayor's purview and part of the work that I want to do as mayor.
Thank you. And our next question will begin with Chris McCoy. And that question is, what do you believe are the most important opportunities for the city of Bellingham?
So I think that is very much in line with the last question as well. I think we have these great models that want to help create a better stratification of economic wealth and equity in our community so that we can have homes for everybody here, basic resources that then help create a clean, vibrant, thriving downtown and communities that are really integrated and active in a wonderful way. And so, I think that is a big opportunity. I mean, just right here, I was reflecting, like, man, like, I don't think it matters which one of us become the mayor. We all know that because our community is calling forth to us to say we care about homeless people and we want to take care of them. And that to me is really impressive and a big opportunity that will help this town thrive. It'll clean up downtown. It'll then create other opportunities and reduce a ton of the resistance to the innovation and the cultural dynamics that come from our town, because it's a place of just great inspiration and great natural beauty. And with that, we've got the waterfront that we can focus on to accelerate. It is one of the biggest waterfronts in the nation, and that creates a great opportunity to attract tourism, great innovative green businesses. And so I think that by eliminating some of the source cause of our inability to grow, we'll be able to also have great, middle housing and a great amount of strong living wage jobs too. So I see a ton of opportunity here, and I really am excited to have the opportunity to be a big part of that.
And now, Seth Fleetwood.
There's so many opportunities before us. The work we do in the city is just really, really exciting work. Whoever should have the good fortune of becoming mayor is going to just be thrilled with the opportunity that's before us, making the future city that we need. That's sort of my theme. It's not about today, it's about the future. Building an amazing, resilient, sustainable, equitable city of the future with beautiful buildings, addressing affordability issues, sustainable environmental infrastructure, doing all manner of things that we need to do to reduce harm in so many different respects. So opportunities that exist are all over the place. Certainly, I agree with Chris. There's an opportunity to tackle what is, without any question, the most challenging thing before us, which is affordability. We absolutely reject in the city of Bellingham the idea that this is just going to be an affluent community for the rich. We have to figure out how to do that, and how we do that is by stabilize the issues relating to rent, using our subsidy influence. We've got lots of money in our community to help people with permanently affordable housing. I think the greatest opportunity we have is going to come through the comprehensive plan update that's coming forward, which is going to be historic in our community. It's going to allow us to create an absolutely inspired, necessary vision for the future of Bellingham.
And Kim Lund. You're muted.
Sorry. I think that there's great and tremendous opportunity that comes along with this election. I see elections as opportunities for a community to reflect on where they want to double down and where they want to pivot. And I see this as an opportunity for us to think critically about the leadership in this moment that can set a strong and inspiring vision to make Bellingham even better. And that's part of the work that I want to do as mayor. I absolutely believe that there's opportunity in housing for the reason I've already talked about. But I think that there's important opportunity as well about how do we come together in this moment. This community just had a 2-day opioid health summit. And we talked about how that community and connection to one another is the antidote to substance abuse disorder. So how do we do that? And what is the role of city through policymaking to do that work? I see that there is opportunities to be intentional in our placemaking, in our public spaces to do this work. How do we create public spaces that strengthen our connections to one another? We have bits of this on nights at Trackside or the farmers market. Let's keep investing in things that bring Bellingham together in this moment and help us move forward together.
And Christina, Michelle Martins.
Yeah, and for the record, I believe I was skipped on that last question.
Oh, let me apologize. And let me give you an opportunity then to answer both of them. And
Thank you.
Whichever one you'd like to start with. And I apologize. I'm trying to keep track and
Absolutely. Can you repeat the one I was skipped for?
I'm not sure. Why don't you let's start with opportunities.
Okay.
And I'll work backwards, okay?
Perfect. I believe, like Kim, I also see nothing but opportunities. And I appreciate Mr. McCoy's idea of spreading people experiencing homelessness throughout the community. And ideally, one day we will get to that point. But after the opioid conference, which I was also in attendance of, the number one thing that I kept hearing was needing to get people out of silos, needing to get service providers out of silos and communicating more effectively. I have been essentially stalking a property that is available in our community that I think is more than large enough for each of our reentry specialists and providers to have their own office. I think the community is under the impression that if you need assistance, you walk down to Opportunity Council, they open the door, and it's like a DMV suite of services, and you just pick which window you need. That is not the case, and I don't believe it was ever set up to do that. But I do believe it's something we truly need so that all of our providers can be communicating more effectively so that people who are in need of assistance can go to one place and get a much more cohesive answer, especially if they were directed to the wrong entity. And the one thing I'm going to keep harping on is community centers. With the work I did with the Racial Equity Commission and the focus groups there, the one thing that came up over and over again was a lack of spaces for community members to gather for free and get to know each other and become true friends and not just neighbors.
Thank you. And again, my apologies. And let's see if I'm getting this right. I think the question that was asked before this, and everyone can chime in to correct me if I'm wrong. In addition, I think we were asking about programs that for our unhoused neighbors.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Okay. And let me ask the question again fresh so that you have it. In addition to the many programs and policies already in place at the city to serve our unhoused neighbors, please describe any new programs you would propose and how to fund those programs.
And as Mr. McCauley wisely pointed out, this is a nationwide epidemic, pandemic, and crisis. And so fortunately, our federal and state governments have acknowledged that, and there is funding becoming available. What to do with that is definitely the question. I spent a lot of my day today with a person who is a Bellingham Housing Authority tenant. And that person came into housing from using the YWCA services and is now going to being unhoused again because she did in fact violate the contract. And so there's nothing to be done about keeping her housed. But in meeting with her and her family members, it is apparent that, and it's not for everyone, but I think much more than in the history of our nation, if there is a crisis or a dependency and addiction issue in a family, it affects the entire family. And so if we're able to get them connected to services and get them housed, essentially we kind of just walk away, unfortunately. And it is creating this never-ending cycle of people re-experiencing homelessness because they just don't have the support systems or the tools they need once they're finally housed. And so again, I think we need to increase the amount of positions we have in case working services and mental health professionals. We need to increase the pay, and we need to get dozens, if not hundreds of more boots on the ground to assist people, stop them from re-entering.
Thank you so much. And Mr. McCauley, the question that was asked was, what do you believe are the most important opportunities for the city of Bellingham?
But,
Did you get that? No, that's yours.
That's my question, right? Timer? Okay, here we go. Inclusiveness in what we say and what we do. That's critical to moving towards the future. I think this past month we've been hearing a little bit more about how our community looks a certain way, and I think that we need to be obvious about who we want to be and not just who we are right now. The environment is a big issue right now. My micromobility plan for transportation mode shift, I think that's one of the most important things we can do, because that's something that the city itself can do right now to have a major impact on our climate change goals. The legislative process where we're asking for more energy efficient equipment, that takes a long time to get out into every building and every house around our community. But the micromobility plan that I've got right now, we can deploy that in the first couple of years and have that plan ready to go and working decades earlier than some of the other things that we're working on right now. We have got to push far harder at regulatory reform to enable lower cost housing options. And as much as I can tweak the city's processes and the departments, I will do that. The council needs to move quickly on this stuff. We don't have time to change our building codes and our zoning codes. 2035 is not quick enough for most of us, right? We have got to do these things much more quickly. And thank you, Kim, for saying placemaking. I appreciate that. I'm time limited here. Look it up online, folks. Placemaking, you can find the information. I published research on placemaking in 1997. And if I am the mayor, I will bring a focus to every single neighborhood as they grow to create a unique identity.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And the next question will begin with Mr. Fleetwood, which is over 50% of Bellingham residents are renters. How satisfied are you that the city's rental inspection program is working well for tenants and landlords? And would you suggest any changes?
A good question. So this came before council, Christine, about 8 weeks ago, I guess. The staff gave a presentation on rental protection options that are available to us for consideration. Council gave direction back to implement or identify a number of things that we could consider for adoption. And I'm pleased to say that at the next council meeting on July 24th, council is going to be giving an important, informative presentation on this topic. Obviously, it's a concern. We've got to find ways to dramatically increase building. We've got to dramatically increase the type of ownership models that exist so that people can gain equity in homes. I mentioned earlier what I believe is going to be a historic comprehensive plan update that's going to allow for enormous public engagement. In fact, that's going to be happening in the months ahead. I think this is an important moment for that because, as people know, the state passed HR House Bill 1110 this session, which allows people as a matter of right to build dramatically increased number of units on their properties. The city is going to be in an important position to figure out how we cite that and accommodate all of that. And I look forward to that process.
Thank you. And now for Kim Lund.
Yeah, when I think about renters protections and what the city could be doing right now, some of the things that I hear are that we allow landlords to have two pathways to rental inspections. We have a private and a public version. And when landlords are using the private option, very little, if no, issues are being highlighted. I think that when you're using the public pathway, then issues are coming to the front. And so we need to eliminate that two-tiered system. Everyone should be doing inspections through the same channels. And when there are issues that are found in that inspection process, and the city is notifying landlords on our letterhead that what improvements need to be made, we need to be following through. If we say we're going to be issuing fines, if there aren't corrections made by a certain time, it is essential to me that the city stands behind those letters and enforces what we say and the actions that we are calling for. Another way that I think about renters' protections is if we have an opportunity to put forth and reimagine a climate action fund, we could direct some of that money to doing energy efficiency upgrades. Many of our renters are paying hundreds of dollars more than homeowners because there has been no investments made in energy efficiency in our rental units.
Thank you so much. And now the same question for Christina Michelle Martins.
Thank you. I work a lot with renters. I spend a lot of time with renters. I am currently following a specific code enforcement case. The city has documentation that this unit was in violation dating back to 2016. It essentially just got lost in the shuffle. The tenant recently went 16 months without heat. I was at the unit when the city inspectors came through. I was also at the unit when the code enforcement officer came through. So everyone, while it's taken entirely too long, is doing their jobs. The case is now to the prosecutor's office, and the code enforcement officer cannot get any response. And so that is obviously a big failing gap. Almost every single tenant protection we have written down is not being enforced in any sort of manner. And even in conversations we have currently or emails that council members get from planning staff, it is still really embracing the carrot over the stick. And it is far too long to hope people come into compliance. We have to get real tough, really bold, and demanding of predatory landlords and property management companies and hold them accountable. With the fines that should be being enforced and collected, we can establish an Office of Tenant Protections, bringing more people to the table, bringing more inspectors to the table. And after that, there's a plethora of ideas we can bring to the table, but it doesn't matter if we can't enforce any of them.
And Mike McCauley.
I think we're at roughly 56% of renters here in the city, which is far, far above the national average. This is a city where investors come to buy because the prices are going up so dramatically. I sold my house a number of years ago to chase a dream, and I've been renting ever since, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with renting, but having been a renter while the inspection program was going on, the inspector came through and found one fault. It was a very modest fault. But in the 3 years after that inspection, there was zero follow-up. So that fault, I left it there I could have fixed it, right? But I left it on purpose just to see who's going to come and do anything about this, and nobody ever did. If we're going to create a new program, and we have to constantly reassess it to make sure that it's actually doing what we asked it to do, and until it's running well, you've got to keep doing that. I don't believe we're doing that at all. So if the council wants this new program, which they clearly did, then they need to fund a complete program with the necessary staff to do all the follow-up. And like Christina was saying, if we don't have enough people, it's not that they don't care about getting it done. They just don't have enough time in their day to get it done. So if we need these programs, we want these programs, they've got to be fully funded so that we are getting what we ask for.
Thank you. And Chris McCoy.
This is a fantastic question. I think it teases out some of the fundamental issues that we're having in our community. I think the public-private interface and accountability there is something that's really struggled, along with the ineffective and inefficient communication that goes on between different departments of the city, as well as the city to the private sector. And so as the mayor and as somebody with deep executive experience going through both public executive training with the SBA, as well as private executive training with the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Ownership Organization, organization. I've got a unique skill set that's much more executive facing. It's something that is incredibly important, and for me, it's it's the livelihood of my business. And the jobs that I support and create are all around effective communication, effective planning, effective execution. And so, in our city, there's a host of very complex problems. And so, it's gonna happen. But in order to put in the right systems to make sure that everybody's communicating effectively, I've had renters come to town halls I've been hosting every week saying, "Hey, I can't get this council's advice, or I can't get the council's help. They won't respond to my emails." So, right out of the gate, making sure and training and retraining everybody and automating some of the communications pathways to make sure that we get the existing caseload shored up, get the fine inspections done, fines issued, collect those fines, and then help the renters that have been put out is huge, just as an initial start. And then really incentivizing ownership, because I believe the path to great community is making sure the residents can own in this town. So that would be another huge part of the way that I would implement those plans.
Thank you so much. And the next question, we'll start with Ms. Lund. Do you believe the process for developing the waterfront is on the right track? Are there changes or actions you would support as the plans move forward?
I think that we have made a tremendous investment in our waterfront. Having been someone that's grown up here, my grandfather retired as a manager from the GP pulp mill. My uncle was a displaced worker at the time that shut down. So I've seen that evolution of that space, and I'm tremendously optimistic about what it could be. To me, I see a vibrant waterfront plan. I see it as an attractant for the green energy future we want to bring here and other economic growth. However, we have to acknowledge that there are some tension points. It is a working waterfront. So right now we have some issues with ABC recycling and residents that live nearby, and some of the investments that we're making downtown that seem to be at odds with the way that the working waterfront is happening right now. So we have to bring community together in this moment to talk about where do we go from here? How do we honor waterfront jobs and the working waterfront that it has been and will continue to be, while we're moving forward with a strong vision for a waterfront that is the real gem of what Bellingham can be. So I'm excited to lead in those conversations, and I'm optimistic about what the waterfront can be.
And Christina Michelle Martins.
Thank you. In the 7 years that I have been here, there definitely has been a wonderful transformation over at the waterfront. The one thing I think is the largest drawback that the community is constantly talking about is, while yes, there are some housing developments going up, the building that has been for sale the longest via the internet, the 1-bedroom condo, is like $650,000. So we're celebrating having more housing, but it's not attainable for anyone in this community. And I personally am nervous about the current Millworks project and Mercy Housing being the developer for that. There are a plethora of issues with the construction that happened with the Eleanor apartments. And so while we are celebrating waterfront living, I don't think it's sustainable, A, for the low income that we're advertising it as, or B, for anyone who actually lives in the community, if your other option is a $600,000 1-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. The pump track is beautiful and it's wonderful and it's lovely. But I do think that there could be a more inclusive opportunities for people to gather. I think that we could really look at having more recreation happening down there. And I will definitely echo what Kim Lund said about the ABC recycling. City Council is getting a lot of emails about that and how it is at odds with what the community says or what the city champions. And to a certain degree, it's kind of like, well, that's the port's fault. What can we do about it from inside City Hall?
Thank you so much. And Mike McCauley.
You're asking a former port commissioner a question about the waterfront. I love this. Is it on the right track? I don't think so. And I had the same answer when I was in the port commission 5 years ago, 10 years ago. When I was first elected, I proposed that the port send that property to the city to utilize the efforts of Public Development Authority that they had at the time. My proposal was shot down by the other commissioners, but the Port Commission does not, and still and never has had the proper staff or the appropriate staff to properly redevelop land like that. So what can the mayor do? The mayor can use the bully pulpit, right? So I can call the 3 port commissioners, 3 of them are all friends of mine, and I can sit down with them and say, hey, we need to change direction, and you really need to work really hard at changing that direction. I think the most critical thing that the port can do, and it's in line with what the city is asking for anyway, is work harder at job creation. Right, the pump track, it's a great amenity, right? And the container village, that's really interesting, right? But there are 0 new jobs on this waterfront, and the public has owned that land and put hundreds of millions of dollars into the land and produced almost 0 jobs on that land. So that's what I would do if I was mayor. I'm going to call the commission. I'm going to push them on the job creation that we can use that land for the city and the residents here.
And Chris McCoy.
So when I was doing my environmental studies and economics undergrad work at Western back in 2006 to 2010, the waterfront was still under its environmental review, and that was something that was fascinating to me and I dived deep into. And I think that the direction of it, some of the master planning of it is pretty good. I do agree that the ABC recycling facility is an antiquated use that is not acceptable at this point. And so that needs to be something that needs to be addressed immediately with the port. I think that this is going to be a very important multilateral situation between the port and Bellingham, as the other candidates have discussed. It's an issue that isn't completely in the city's control. However, the mayor of Bellingham has a huge amount of ability to resource and facilitate making sure that there's clear vision for that the execution on it is timely and accountable. Right now it's a short term. The pump track and the container village, it's a 5-year lease that'll be gone soon, and so we need to make sure we have a clear vision. We pick the right developers. I think that's very important as well, and we need to attract the right businesses. So that's something where, having been a business owner downtown, I actually tried to buy the granary building from Pat and Pat from Ireland, and they were not open to that. So making sure that's a clear case that we need to make sure that we're finding the right developers, finding local value aligned developers, and then getting the building blocks or getting the barriers out of the way so that we can expedite the development and make sure it's done in a way that's congruent with the town's values.
Thank you so much. And now Seth Fleetwood.
Thank you. Like Kim, I grew up with GP always being there. It never occurred to me there would be anything other than a mill. When the opportunity came forward to envision a different use, it was very exciting in this community. I've always had a slightly different viewpoint on it. It's, to me, a long-term legacy project. It's going to get implemented as the market bears. And I had the distinct honor of being on the president of the city council 10 years ago. I made it a point that we were going to, at long last, we're going to get the master plan and the accompanying documents adopted. And we did on the last day of the year in 2013. It's always been understood that that's a dynamic process. It's a partnership between the port and the city. The port owns it. The city regulates it. There are processes in place for making change-ups on it. I'm excited about what's happening down there. If we believe that there are fundamental changes that should be made, there's a process for how we can do that. We have good relations with our jurisdictional partners. I feel good about it. I feel good about the things that we're seeing down there. The interim uses are exciting. I'm excited about the future 37 acres of parks that's available for it. It's going to be a great place as long as we're intentional about making it happen.
Thank you so much. And for our next question, we'll begin with Christina Michelle Martins. What can the city do to incentivize the construction of more workforce housing units in our community?
So sorry. I believe the city can do, oh my gosh, really anything that we can dream of. But one thing that I am pursuing, an idea that I have had, again, currently being a renter and if homes were back to their $450, maybe even $500,000 entry level price point for something you could live in, it would be a no-brainer. But with median housing prices being, I believe, still around 650, it's just not attainable. I would love to see a relationship between Bellingham City and Whatcom County to purchase land that we would identify as potential building sites 20 years in the future, but bring Colshan Land Trust into the conversation right now and actually purchase manufactured homes. Right now, the city spends $400,000 per unit of housing that we are constructing for low income. And manufactured homes are not the way that your grandparents remember them or lived in them, and are so much less expensive and ready to go. By being able to alleviate the stress on the rental market, or I think we'd be able to alleviate some of the stress on the rental market by offering land trust manufactured homes, and being able to give community members who live here already an entry pathway into being a homeowner. And that can work for both levels, because there's almost nothing available for $500,000 that's ready to be lived in.
Thank you. And Mike McCauley.
Right. As a building designer, this is an issue I deal with every day: the cost of housing, the cost of materials, the cost of labor. Everything I do all day long, that's literally answering a question very much like this. What can the city do, though, to incentivize? So some of that is regulatory change, and that's going to come through the city council. We need smaller lot sizes allowed across the city. We're baby stepping into the accessory dwelling unit conversation, and the state legislature has already bypassed us. So while we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do, the state legislature has already said, you know what, we're moving on, and bypassed us. So smaller lots, we have to do that. Incremental housing, it's a kind of housing, look it up online. Incremental housing, it's a fantastic way for housing to be built at a much, much lower cost. We need tiny homes allowed in more places than they're allowed now. For example, there's a property on Iron Street that's for sale. It's a single family property on a corner. It's currently only allowed to have one house on it. You could easily put 4 tiny homes on it. And tiny homes kind of are on wheels, so I think we know what those look like. But you could easily put 4 tiny homes on there and put, maybe as many as 8 people on that, rather than just 2 or 3. Not legal, right? So we have to change that rule. And finally, we need to, and this is part of my program, is to sell municipal revenue bonds. I did this as a port commissioner. If you know the All-American Marine Building down on the waterfront, the ports do this all the time. The city can do this. We can build public housing at a not-for-profit rate, and the rents pay for it. No tax increases.
Thank you. And Chris McCoy.
Yeah, I think what everybody's getting at here is just density is a thing that is of critical importance for us to address so many issues as far as livability, access for working class to be able to have sustainable housing, ownership in housing. There are great organizations like the Colshan Community Land Trust. I met with Dean on their Birchwood site just about 3 weeks ago, and it's been sitting there for 6 years because they're waiting on the local and the county government to allow them to create new projects that are already financed. They just need the green light. There's some small policy issues around getting some density bonuses for low and middle income housing that needs to be streamlined and pushed through. So fast tracking the things that they've already been working on for over 2 decades to make sure that, they've earned our trust. They know the community. They have a huge list of people that want to be able to and are qualified for homes. We just need to make sure that we get out of their way. So expanding the planning department substantially, making sure that we're able to crank out permits, lean into the House Bill 1110, as well as the ADU bills and the middle housing bills, because it's all there. It's a need that's very rampant across the state. There's funds there, there's talent there, and so we really just need to make it a top priority to help alleviate the growing pains, and then give the hardworking living wage earners comfortable places to live. So that's how I would approach that.
Thank you. And Seth Fleetwood.
So lots of great ideas here. The primary thing of being mayor, being in an executive position, is following the policy dictates of council. And council's charged with identifying the way that we're going to actually make this happen, that implements the vision that we want for our community. I agree with Chris. The theme here seems to be density. has broad agreement that we need to find ways to dramatically increase housing. We're going to have to build our way out of this. And by what means do we do that? The context for all of this, and I keep going back to the comprehensive plan and how I believe this particular process that we're just beginning is going to be historic in our community, because it comes at precisely the time that the state legislature is requiring or allowing, as a matter of right, dramatically increased density. So we're going to be charged with determining how we do all this, how we take all of this energy and incorporate it through an important process that is collaborative with our community members, inclusive, and results in important plans for what we want this community to be in the future. And it's going to result in dramatically increased housing. And over time, I think we're going to see the benefits of it as it relates to cost. So I look forward to working with people to determine how we do that.
And Kim Lund.
Well, this is something that I think is critical to be in the mayor's purview, because the mayor is functionally the chief executive of more, an organization that has more than 900 coworkers. And like any good CEO that's evaluating coming to Bellingham right now, they want to make sure their workforce is going to be housed. And we know that we have many city employees that cannot afford to buy or live in the community in which they go to work to serve every day. So this is something that I've thought a lot about. I think that there are some creative options. Seattle passed I-35 to create a public development authority. I'm curious to see what that looks like for them. I know that there are some pension funds out there willing to invest, with the stipulation that it goes to union employees that might work at the city. Those are some creative options. But to me, I think the most pragmatic solution forward right now is investing in the ways that we can increase supply across the continuum, and less so on ADUs or tiny homes, because to me, that's less of a workforce housing solution. I'm interested in how do we build the homes that people want to live in. So how can we create pre-approved designs for middle housing, for townhomes, for cottage courtyard concepts that has community inherently built in. Let's look at our multifamily tax exemption. We have 8 and 12-year options. Let's go to 20-year options and condition it on workforce housing being part of those projects.
Thank you. And our next question is asking you to please describe your position on the potential November ballot issue that asks for a sales tax increase to build a new jail, and what are the reasons for your opinion? Please be specific. And we'll start with Mike Macaulay. Thank you.
Oh yeah, Macaulay. All right. This is going to be a short answer for me. I don't think we need a new jail. I think we need all the services that go along with what we've been talking about, that go with the building where people are incarcerated. If you know anything about the jail, if you're sentenced to our local jail, you're supposed to be there for 364 days or less. Okay, which begs the question, why are you even incarcerated in such a facility? Why are you in a minimal security situation where you're getting the services so that it's not just a revolving door for you? This is near and dear to my heart because I have family members that have literally gone through this their entire lives. They go to jail, they sit there for 6 months, they come right back out on the street. And somebody asked me once, what's the most important thing people in the jail need? And everybody says, oh, they need a new building or new locks or something. You know what they need? They need hope, because these people are only going to be there for a very short period of time. Those people should be in minimal security and get the services that they need to help them come back out into our community, that they'll be right back in a few months, and help them reintegrate, right? So they don't just revolving door there. For those people that do need to be incarcerated for longer periods of time, a smaller building, maybe even the one we already own, can be repurposed, but we don't need everybody that's in the jail to be incarcerated the way that they're incarcerated now. I do not support the new jail that has been proposed.
And Chris McCoy.
You know, I certainly am a strong proponent of making sure that we have the services in the community to reduce the amount of incarcerations drastically. I think that's something that's really important. However, with the state of the jail and having seen both firsthand and through the community, some of the conditions of our current jail. It is incredibly unsafe, is causing incredible pain and suffering to a lot of people that, like, as Mike said, probably shouldn't be there for very long, right? And so, I do believe that it's also a bigger problem than just the city of Bellingham. This is something that needs to be collaboratively done with all the other cities in our county. I went out and spoke at an engagement in Linden not too long ago, and they said, "Hey, we haven't heard of any other candidates. Nobody here is looking at the county from the Bellingham mayor perspective." And I think that's kind of narrow-minded for us to not be really taking into consideration. Not only is Bellingham growing rampantly, but also so is the extended community. So I do believe we need a new jail. I don't believe that it needs to be something that is necessarily as broad as it is currently scoped to be. I think a lot of the resources going into that can definitely work towards and do a ton of the hard work towards preventing and creating community services to just have more hope, have more homes, things like that. So, it's something it's on the ballot. So it's before any of us will really to have a ton of deciding factor for, but we will definitely have to execute effectively. And so if the public should choose that there is a new jail, I'm going to make the best of it and make sure it's a lasting investment for everybody and community
Thank
health at
you.
large.
Thank you so much. And Seth Fleetwood.
I support what I anticipate is going to be a ballot proposition put on by the council. I've been a member of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. I've been watching this group of dedicated people do this important work for a long time now. It's the most thorough, thoughtful work that I've seen any public process in my entire life. It's really impressive. It's compassionate. It's geared towards addressing people's needs. The needs assessment that was produced, I think it had something like 34 particular proposals. I think 29 of them or so are all related to getting people the services that are needed. And this is going to be the funding mechanism by which we do that. The existing jail that was built in 1983 is an inhumane jail. It needs to be replaced. The funding mechanism will bring in around $13 million a year. $5 million of that is going to be given to the cities, proportionate to population. That means the city of Bellingham is going to get about $4 million of that $5 million. And as mayor, I'm going to recommend that we dedicate over half of that to behavioral health, to implement all of those services are necessary. So this is going to be a mechanism by which the city of Bellingham can dramatically increase funding for all the services that are needed to help people.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Kim Lund.
Yeah, I feel that the jail, the new jail, as it's proposed to go onto the ballot in November, is an opportunity for our community to think critically about what justice looks like. And it is an opportunity, as Seth mentioned, to be a funding mechanism for the wraparound services that are currently inadequate in our community. I think that the current jail is, as it's been mentioned, is inhumane, but I think it's additionally important as an executive that you're keeping risk in your purview. That's a unique responsibility of executive leadership. And to me, I see the current facility as a huge potential liability for the county and our community. When I did a tour there, I saw a classroom that has been turned into a courtroom, inside recreation centers where people stacked on one another, and the library has literally been moved to a broom closet. And I think that sends a very powerful message to what we think about the people that are in there and also the people that are working in there. So for those reasons, we absolutely need a new facility. And I do believe that the stakeholder advisory process, while not perfect, has had a long strength of conversation across stakeholders, and we'll be putting more than 50% moving forward after years 4 or 6 towards those rehabilitative services and more justice.
And Christina Michelle Martins.
I unfortunately think that the ballot levy is in lieu of trying to actually develop sustainable, affordable housing. We have so many people that are in need of other services that the Stakeholder Advisory Committee did recommend, and it is being sold as part of the package. And to a certain degree, I think we have to split the difference. I would much rather see only enough funds we need to really rehabilitate the current jail, and for all of the funding that we absolutely need for all of the services to support these people once they leave incarceration and to prevent them from continuing in the cycle. I also think that with any ballot measure that comes forward, any new plans for sourcing funding for a jail. I don't know how many people know this, but the Whatcom County Sheriffs are not actually accredited by the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. And part of that evaluation has to do with how your facilities are kept. So from my point of view, it seems like the Whatcom County Sheriff's Department let it really fall into this disrepair and are now asking for a brand new building when we don't have any reassurance that we won't be in this exact situation 30 years later. And even in 30 years, we're still going to need to spend more money on supportive services if we ever want to get out of this situation.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to each of the candidates. I am just sorry that that's all the time that we have for questions this evening, because there is so much to talk about, and I appreciate all of you and your unique voices. Now is the time for each of the candidates to present their 1-minute closing statement, and candidate McCoy, you will go first.
Thank you so much. This has been an incredible pleasure. It's really exciting to me and an honor to be a part of this civic process in a town I've grown up in. I have deep love for. I've set deep roots of my businesses, my family, and I'm very dedicated, and I have a ton of skin in the game. Looking forward to making sure that it is a success, both the beautiful assets that we have and the great community values that we have, centered around environmentalism, family, social equity. All of those things are upheld and grown, and the opportunities that we all see there being so much of are transferred into an executive leadership style that creates the organization of government with a culture that is thriving, that can grow, that can be nimble and can test and learn in an iterative way that keeps up with the pace of growth and keeps increasing the quality of life here. So thank you so much for your time. Please check out McCoy for Mayor. That's the number4.com for more in-depth details, and vote McCoy. Come when the ballots drop in 3 days.
Thank you so much. And Seth Fleetwood.
I'll join Chris in just thanking the league and wishing the very best to all my fellow opponents in this effort. We're all trying to create an important, positive vision for the future of Bellingham. So this is an exciting thing. I bring deep knowledge based on years and years of experience, deep relationships, working on our community's most vexing challenges over decades. I've been deeply involved in my entire adulthood in my community. It's all about creating betterment and a positive view for the future. So I love this work. I love my job despite all of the challenges. I've learned an enormous amount. I've assembled an exceptional leadership team at the city. We work well together. We're collaborative. I've fostered a culture of listening and engaging and talking things out. It'd be my honor to continue as mayor of Bellingham. So thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And candidate Kim Lund.
Thank you to the league for this opportunity. It was a pleasure to be here tonight. To me, the stories that we're telling one another around the dinner tables and in summer barbecues right now, and if you go into online forums, they reflect a community that is a bit disconnected from local government. And they're looking for clear vision to move us forward, to be the great city that we know that we can be. And they are yearning for courageous leadership to do that work. I'm going to be a leader as mayor of Bellingham that will take decisive action so that in 4 years, we're telling one another very different stories. We're telling stories of families that are going downtown after the sports game or the performance to get ice creams together. We're telling stories of young families and employees that work at the city that are able to find good housing here. And we've taken actions for hopeful, healthy a future in light of climate uncertainty. And I'm optimistic about the future that we can all create together for Bellingham.
Thank you very much. And now candidate Christina Michelle Martins.
Thank you. And also thank you everyone who is watching this in real time or later, and being engaged in democracy and being educated on who is on your ballot. These are unprecedented, extraordinary times, and our community just does not have the luxury of waiting on some of our most important issues. And just like a broken record that I am, if we cannot get a hold of how we treat and support renters in this community, who are 54%, I believe exactly, definitely over 50%, we are not going to be able to find the air while we're drowning. We're not going to be able to stop having to worry about these issues. We have to put the people who live here first again. And as a person who lives in these waters and talks to those people, I know where we need to start.
Thank you very much. And finally, candidate Macaulay.
Hi, thank you, Jill, Seth, Kim, Christina, Christopher, everybody at home. A Bellingham mayor isn't just an executive managing staff. We have a strong mayor position here, and that person needs to understand things like urban living or be a cheerleader for our local businesses. They need to know that what Public Works does and how Public Works does it. A Bellingham mayor needs to see missed opportunities. And to do that, a mayor has to be much more than just a politician who wrangled the most votes. A mayor must understand cities, and that mayor then leads good staffers and good employees to do the work of the people. And if that mayor doesn't watch out, that mayor will get convinced it takes most of a year to replace a 100-foot bridge on one of the city's busiest streets downtown. You don't have to convince me our regulatory oversight is slowing down things like getting a building permit for your new house. The good people in permitting are so understaffed that your submission will sit for at least 10 weeks before they even look at it to start their process. They need 4 more people in that department alone. Process, process, process. Look, I have plans to tackle our issues. I mentioned my 5 points earlier. My plans are actionable now without waiting for City Council or Olympia, and they are paid for. I believe I have the right skills, temperament, and energy to lead Bellingham through the next set of big challenges, and I hope you'll support me. Tell your friends about me. Vote for me in the upcoming primary. So take a deeper look at me on my website, MikeMacauleyForMayor.com. You can Google that. You'll probably find it somehow. And thank you all so much. Vote Mike.
Well, on behalf of the League of Women Voters, I would like to deeply and sincerely thank the candidates for being here with us this evening and for their interest in running for public office. Voters can find more information about the candidates online at vote411.org and in your voter pamphlet. Ballots will be mailed on July 12th, 2023. Your ballots must be postmarked or in a ballot drop box before 8:00 p.m. on August 1st, 2023. And please remember to sign the ballot envelope. And if mailing by postal service, we recommend mailing early. Thank you and good night.